Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be reviewing adding and subtracting fractions. So we're going to use the knowledge about equivalent fractions from yesterday to try to find common denominators to add and subtract fractions. Once again, this should be review from 5th and 6th grade, so we definitely should be masters at this. So hopefully this is just a quick review and that we'll be able to move on quickly. So our objective today, we're going to go back, make sure on our new piece of notebook paper that we're writing adding and subtracting fractions and then the date across the top. So if you need to pause the video and do this, you definitely should do that now. Underneath that, you should write your objective, which is I will be able to add and subtract fractions. So just a review of adding and subtracting fractions. So remember, when you are adding and subtracting, you must have a common denominator. You must have a common denominator. Then once you have that common denominator, your next step is to add and subtract the numerator, which is the top, and then keep the denominator the same. So your denominator should be common all throughout the what you're adding or subtracting and the answer. So, adding and subtracting fractions. So I want you in your journal today, underneath what you wrote this, so I want you to write this down, and underneath I want you to write a big X, or a cross, or a T, or however you want to explain it. And I want it to be pretty big because you're going to be writing in each of the squares, so it probably is going to take up the rest of your paper. In the first top left quadrant, you're going to write step 1, which is write the problem. So for our example, our problem is going to be 2/3 plus 1/4. Okay, so we're adding 2/3 plus 1/4. Now, we have to think, do these have common denominators? The answer is no. So we need to find common denominators. So that's what step 2 is, to find a common denominator. Write down step 2, find a common denominator in the top right section, right here, the top right section, exactly how I have it. In that top section, we are going to try to find common denominators, so we are going to say, well, 3, the first denominator that we have is 3. And so one way we can find a common denominator is to start skip counting. We have 3, 6, 9, 12. Then now I'm going to try 4. When you write down 4, you can skip count 4, 8, 12. And we know that 12s are common, and so that's what we're going to be using for our common denominator. Another way that we can do that, if you can notice, 3 times 4 is 12. It happened to work out that way, that when you multiply it is the lowest. Sometimes that's not always the case, so just use your discretion. It just might mean more simplifying later if you do the multiplying the denominators method. So now we found that 12 is going to be our common denominator. So we can't just change the denominators though without changing the numerators. So that's our next step, is to rewrite the problem. Step 3, rewrite the problem. You're going to write that in the bottom lower left quadrant. Rewrite the problem. And so now we're going to find the equivalent fraction. So 2/3, and we know that to get to 12 from 3, we had to multiply it by 4, and we can't just multiply the denominator, we have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. So 2/3 times 4/4, because we're multiplying both top and bottom, numerator and denominator, by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times 4 is 12, so 2/3 is equal to 8/12. Their common denominators are equivalent fractions. We're going to do the same thing with 1/4, so 1/4 times 3/3 this time, because 4 times 3 is 12. And 1 times 3 is 3, so we know that 3/12 is an equivalent fraction to 1/4. Now you can check yourself, and I highly suggest that you do check yourself. You can reduce 8/12 to equal 2/3, and you can reduce 3/12 to equal 1/4. It's just an easy, quick way to check yourself, and I encourage that you do. So now, you're not done yet. Now you're going to take 8/12 plus 3/12 and solve it. So we we add the numerators. 8 plus 3 equals 11, and the denominators stay the same. So listen, add the numerators or subtract if that's what the problem calls for, and your denominator stays the same. Lastly, step 4 is to simplify. We have 11 over 12. Can we simplify 11 over 12? Take a minute, think about it. Can we simplify 11 over 12? No, we cannot simplify 11 over 12. So because we cannot simplify anymore, that's it. 11 over 12 is our answer. So 2/3 plus 1/4 is equal to 11 over 12. You're going to follow these same steps as if you're going to subtract. It's the exact same, but you're just subtracting in step 3 instead of adding. So now we're going to be doing an activity together or in class using this knowledge. So make sure that you have your notes down correctly, and so you're ready to refer back to it if you need it. So thank you so much for being active listeners and good note takers, and I will see you in class ready to discuss adding and subtracting fractions.